Hey, everybody. So I'm going to do a presentation that I did in another group on gray area drinking, and I wanted to record it because a lot of people asked for the slides. And sometimes it's nice to have a visual, but I'm going to go through it so you don't have to look at this if you aren't able to, if you're walking or you're driving. So no worries. But if you are wanting to see the slides and save this, I want you to be able to have it. So it's called the gray area. What's really keeping you stuck with alcohol? And if you've never heard of what gray area drinking is, it's where you're not rock bottom, you're not like without a job, homeless, but alcohol is causing problems in your life in some shape or form. And a lot of women are stuck in this in between where they're healthy, they're doing all the things, they're taking care of themselves, but alcohol is like this one thing that's making it much more difficult, and they're finding it to be problematic. But then there's a hard part of it because you're like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. And welcome here. If you're new, I'm Chrissy Janiga. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, alcohol-free coach, author of Sobriety. I'm a trained hypnotherapist and make peace with food practitioner. So my journey has also been about food, and I stopped dieting and I started working on emotional eating. And this is something I love to talk about in addition to sobriety, because I find a lot of women go from one thing to another, and it's really more about healing um, a few different things. But without further ado, let's get going. All right. So my story, I'm not going to go in depth because I have other podcast episodes on this, but I thought a lot about not drinking for about 5 years. I never hit a serious rock bottom. Although I'm going to be honest with you, I was a social binge drinker, which came with its own issues, which caused me to black out sometimes, feel just so hungover and terrible, and questioning my relationship with alcohol for a long time. I also was a healthy person, liked to work out, and would often undo so much of my exercise progress. I would overeat, I would do all these things when it came to alcohol. So I stopped drinking in 2022 because I was really kind of sick of this cycle. The other thing I would notice is I'd become more emotional when I would drink. And so it was like I knew I was doing this. It wasn't necessarily that I blacked out, but I had almost no control over my emotions. I understand why I did this now, but at the time it's very shameful. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I just was really mentally exhausted from drinking. What surprised me is I did hear myself say when I decided to quit, for realsy, for reals, because I did drink again after 6 months. But once I decided to quit, I heard myself say doors will open if you stop drinking alcohol, which is something I do talk about in my book. And what I discovered really underneath all this was just the inability to heal the things I needed to work on, like the people pleasing, the worthiness. And eventually I quit dieting in 2025, and I worked really hard on my emotional eating, which I would not have been able to do if I was drinking. And I wrote Soul Led Sobriety because I think this is a book where I give you stories, but I give you tangible information, how to's, so you can start your journey and understand yourself more on a deeper level. And I think this is the really important work that I'm here to do. It isn't surface level work. This is work that you're going to do that doesn't just change your relationship with alcohol. Although I would not have been able to think about these things early in my journey, I just wanted to have a better relationship with alcohol. I was just sick of feeling so crappy sometimes. So if this sounds like you, I totally understand. You're successful functioning, you're getting things done. You're not this unsuccessful person, meaning you're working out, you're doing the things, but alcohol is the one thing kind of keeping you in this cycle. You know alcohol is not serving you, but you also fear of not fitting in, being judged, and how to socialize without it. There is a lot of pressure from other people when we stop drinking, like, why are you doing that? Like questioning our motives, and a lot of FOMO. We're not sure how to live a life without alcohol, but we don't necessarily identify as an alcoholic or even someone that would want to go to AA. I surely did not resonate with those types of things in my journey. And you've also maybe told yourself you need to cut back more times than you count. and you try to control alcohol. There's a part of you that really wants to quit, and there's this other part that can't imagine life without alcohol. And you might have a glass of wine to unwind and then another. And then some of us, go from not drinking so much to freaking drinking every day. Like it's just kind of gotten out of hand. And we're like really frustrated with ourselves. But I want to tell you, you can quit drinking, take a break, or change your relationship with alcohol just because you don't like the way it makes you feel. And sleep. Sleep is so freaking important. What alcohol actually does to your body. So, just so you know, the older we get, the longer it stays in your body. So, you're not making this up, you're not sensitive. Alcohol is a toxin and it truly just doesn't feel good in your body anymore. And your body knows it, right? So, it disrupts your sleep. Sleep is extremely important. It controls many hormones, emotions, dopamine, circuitry, so many things. You may fall asleep faster, but REM sleep is reduced, meaning you're not getting that restorative sleep each night, even if you're sleeping 8 hours, which I don't know about you, but I would wake up a lot when I was drinking and I'd have so much anxiety. So the brain wants balance. Alcohol really does spew out a ton of different chemicals. So it puts you into a more sedated, calm state, but it often creates this 2 to 4 a.m. anxiety spiral. It is actually not random at all. This is just the way our brains work with these chemicals. So, what happens is our brain, to try to compensate all the chemical disruption, we have less calming GABA. So, the relaxed GABA that initially was spewed from alcohol, now it's depleted, and we have more glutamate. So, this is really more of a stimulating chemical. So, you feel anxious, like really anxious. And then if you did something the night before out of integrity, you feel more anxious, which is oftentimes how I would feel. And I would sit in bed and be like, oh my God, did I do anything bad? If I did black out, it was just really exhausting. And poor sleep equals more cravings. You will be craving probably more for alcohol and food. And I say that because that's just the way this works. And it disrupts your hormones. It disrupts ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is our hunger hormone, so you feel hungrier. And leptin is our fullness satiety hormone, so you're not going to feel as full after you eat like the normal food you would eat the next day. And also, poor sleep really affects stress. And when we have high levels of stress, we will feel just extra worse. We might have no motivation. And also, the impulse control decreases. And again, more stress increases. So you will be grabbing for more of those things because you just don't have that ability because of this impulse control. So, what is it doing for your mental health? You might know the whole word of anxiety. Now, the relief alcohol provides is very um, temporary. The rebound effects creates more anxiety afterwards. This is why it's so hard to break because you're drinking potentially to help you relax, lessen anxiety, but it's actually causing more anxiety, which most of us don't want, right? But alcohol increases cortisol levels. Not only does it disrupt our sleep, which increases our cortisol levels, it actually just increases our cortisol levels. You might feel relaxed, and we'll explain why that is in a minute, but it actually creates this terrible rebound effect where you feel worse the next day and you think alcohol is needed. So you can see why this isn't actually a cycle that is based also on science, right? So it increases your anxiety and overthinking. You will have more maybe emotional reactivity that you would normally not have. You have a lower resilience to stress. And let me just tell you, stress is a normal part of being a human. We all have stress. So the goal isn't to like never have stress, but we don't want to add it, right? On top of our already stressful lives or busy lives, we're adding basically fuel to the fire and increased irritability, right? You feel more irritable. Maybe you're more short with your kids. It's a domino effect. Everything we do in life is a domino effect, and the temporary fix actually becomes the problem. So, what's happening in your brain? I want to explain this because sometimes people don't get it. And when we look at stopping alcohol, and people tell me, where do I start, Chrissy? Let's educate you. You should start by educating yourself even before you make a decision. Only you can make the decision if you want to stop drinking. But if you don't have the stops, it's hard to really stop, right? And you kind of get into this shame cycle of what is wrong with me? Why I can't get this under control? And if you can understand the basics about this, it'll make more sense and hopefully you'll have less shame. We really can't heal if we're in this shame cycle. The dopamine flood. Alcohol triggers a surge of dopamine, like a lot of dopamine, unnatural amounts of dopamine, which is your brain's pleasure signal. It feels like reward, relief, connection, fun. It feels so good, right? And then it teaches your brain, hey, remember this. This is super good because it can't tell the difference between a natural source of dopamine and real dopamine in your life. And dopamine also surges before we even drink alcohol. So the thought of drinking, maybe you drink at 5 o'clock or whatever in the evening or on a Friday, the simple thought about that creates this flood. And then the baseline drops. Over time, your brain can compensate by producing less dopamine on its own. And then everyday life feels kind of bleh when you stop drinking, right? Or boring. And it's not that that's really the case. It's that sometimes we have to recalibrate our brains and take a break from alcohol. And so it's just important to understand this because sometimes people are like, I'm bored. Or they'll be like, this doesn't feel so good. And speaking of that, dopamine thrives on novelty. So think of things that bring you joy, pleasure, newness, fun, even maybe doing a different hobby or doing something that brings you more purpose. And alcohol can even feel like novelty, right? Um, and so that's why it's important to do something when we stop drinking, not just do nothing. What I mean by that is sometimes people expect it to feel better right away, and sometimes it takes time. So why moderation is so hard? If you've ever met me, you know I don't believe in moderation. I tried it. It did not work. Your brain is wired to seek the dopamine hit. The craving isn't a weakness. It's truly neuroscience. The good news is the brain can be rewired. And we'll talk a little bit about the habit loop in a minute here, because that's important as well. And moderation is fleeting and also can like illusion. When I was drinking, sometimes I was able to moderate, meaning I've still been drinking, by the way. But it didn't feel like I was out of control. I felt I remembered everything and it felt okay the next day. So in a way, like we have these blips of times we drank that it was good or fine, and then it wasn't. And so what happens is we tell ourselves, well, see, we're not that bad. We got this under control. And then the next time we don't. So it's really kind of like this game of Russian roulette where you don't know if you're going to win or you're going to lose. And fundamentally, it's so much easier not to moderate. It takes way less mental gymnastics. And it's one less thing you have to worry about. We already have enough going on in our lives, and trying to moderate is just one more thing to add to our plate. So the ripple effect on hormones and fitness goals. So most women are healthy women who care about their bodies, who care about their health and longevity, yet alcohol is quietly undermining it all. So real quick, let's talk about hormones. It disrupts your estrogen balance. And a lot of people are on HRT, so hormone supplements, not hormone supplements, but things to get our hormones balanced. And it's really hard to balance something if you're drinking, because it can often, I feel like you have to know what your baseline is, right? And it's not for me to tell you if you shouldn't or shouldn't be on hormones, but different things. But I think this is just important to know as we age and as we, go through perimenopause and menopause, we can be making it a little bit worse by our drinking. So it spikes cortisol, like I mentioned, your stress hormone, which all this is very inflammatory as well. It worsens blood sugar regulation. So alcohol has a lot of sugar in it, even when you think it doesn't. Even when you think it doesn't, right? Because you'll hear people say, oh, this is less calories. Well, I drink skinny margaritas too, but it turns out I drink more than one skinny margarita. So it's like, so my blood sugar would be all over the place. And what also happens is you have the next day as well. And often, sometimes our food choices get affected by the next day. And when you are constantly having your blood sugars spike and up, up and up, up and up all the time, it's very stressful on the body, and it can also increase cravings. So it amplifies PMS and hot flashes. Do you understand like how sweaty I would get sometimes when I was drinking red wine when I would go to bed and wake up. It was insane. And we've already mentioned about the alcohol disrupts ghrelin, your hunger hormone, and your leptin, your fullness hormone. So you will probably eat more. And then the fitness and body. So alcohol is deceiving because people tell you all the time balance. And I have to say, like, some people can balance alcohol, right? They can have alcohol every once in a while, but a lot of times it's confusing in the fitness world because we look up to people. And when people tell us to balance it, I don't know what that is. I was trying to balance my alcohol use by binge drinking, and it wasn't balanced. It was unhealthy, to be honest with you. So you might think, hey, I really want to change my relationship with alcohol. I don't like the way I'm feeling. But this fitness person you're following that has 1 million followers, that's so popular, is showing you cocktails and I'm able to do this and I still look like this. And you're like, well, maybe I can just try to control it when you really abandoned your own thoughts. I want to put that out there because I did this for years. I looked up to fitness people. I tried so hard to balance alcohol and it was just ping ponging. It was hard to do that. I would overeat, I would undereat, and it was just really an unhealthy relationship with alcohol and food. It also increases cortisol, again, which breaks down muscle and more belly fat storage. When you have abnormally high levels of cortisol, again, you're going to crave not just alcohol, you're going to crave food. And you're going to crave food that's more palatable, that's crunchy, that's sugary, that's processed. You don't crave broccoli. I wish we did, but in those states, you don't. It lowers your motivation to exercise, or your exercise routine isn't as good as it could be. And you're like exhausted. You're not able to lift as much weight. Like you can't really progress as like you would like to do. I remember making myself wake up on Monday after drinking from a weekend. I would feel terrible. I would feel so inflamed, just speaking of inflammation. And I would feel terrible for like 3 days, right? It was recovery. And I mean, I wasn't drinking like, every day of the week either. So I mean, this is like I put the point this out because you don't have to be a certain way. You might be drinking every day and you might also feel the same way or you don't. But the bottom line is you have to see what works for you. And also alcohol has extra calories, 7 calories per gram, which is a lot. It's a lot. So, and you have to look at what alcohol does to all your body, your whole entire body, because it's not just about the calories, it's about everything it does. But sometimes people struggle to lose weight or to maintain their weight because of alcohol. I already mentioned these two, and then alcohol is prioritized because it's a toxin and fat burning shuts off. When your body knows that this is a toxin, it must be taken out. But all the while, your brain sees it as a dopamine like exciting party. So you can see why so many people have contradictory things. My brain thinks it's good, my body thinks it's bad. And then we will talk about the social constructs around alcohol here in a little bit. And then you're just like confused AF. Like what should I do? So alcohol is a depressant. It depresses your nervous system. You know that feeling of relaxation? It is your brain activity slowing down. That's what it is. So you're not imagining you feel more relaxed at all. It's happening. It's just not actually long lasting, wonderful relaxation. It's not healthy, right? It's not going to help you at all, but it feels like it does. And it's classified as a central nervous system depressant. Again, it is your brain. I already said all this. But anyways, it slows brain communication. It reduces like if you're going to do things, you might do things you normally don't do, dampens emotional regulation. So how do I regulate my emotions? Which some of us will text people and do things like that we would never do sober, right? This is why. And then again, it creates that rebound anxiety afterwards because number one, your brain feels the rebound anxiety because there's truly chemical depletion and no balance. But then also, you actually have other anxiety from doing whatever you did that you didn't want to do, potentially too, or feeling like you're letting people down, getting sad, getting upset. So these things matter. So I'm just going to briefly touch on testosterone connection. We, as women, have testosterone. We need it for energy, libido, motivational, motivation, and muscle. Alcohol disrupts it. So the liver does a lot of different jobs. And part of it is prioritizing alcohol over hormonal balance because, again, it needs to work with that because it's a toxin. And then I want you to know that when estrogen rises from alcohol use, we can have an increase in breast cancer. So there is research that notes that drinking can increase breast cancer risk. Does not mean you're going to get it, but I think it's something that we as women need to be informed of. And I think it does a huge disservice not to talk about these things. And again, we have lower motivation or fatigue when our testosterone drops. Now, your testosterone might not be low because you're drinking, but it might not be as high as it could be too. So I think it's just something to think about. And again, lower libido. And also too, like, I don't know about you, this episode's not all about this, but getting intimate when you're like drunk, it's maybe people will convince themselves that they need to, or it's better. But like research says otherwise, what happens to women's bodies when we're drinking with lubrication and other things. So I digress, and I'm not going to go into too much about that, but I think that's something important to at least note. So the World Health Organization stated no level of alcohol consumption is safe for our health. None. Despite, I used to think red wine was good for your health, right? And so we're finding, no, that's not actually true. Alcohol is classified as a group 1 carcinogen, the same as tobacco, asbestos, and radiation. It causes at least 7 types of cancer. Alcohol is an addictive drug. It is a drug, you guys. We know this. It's a glamorized drug. So it's not necessarily called that. Now, when we talk about 7 types of cancer, obviously I'm not a doctor and I can't predict people's future. It doesn't mean everyone's going to get cancer. I mean, but like what happens too is like we could have even disease because which can cause, obviously other things in our body. When we have high levels of inflammation and we're not getting sleep and all these things are happening, it can make us very sick. So the part 2, what's really keeping you stuck? So science is important. I think you need to know it all, but this doesn't always help people stop drinking, which can feel really, really shameful and crappy because you're like, I know it's bad for me. Why can't I stop? So here are some of the reasons why it's hard for you to stop. What you believe and who you think you are. You still believe alcohol helps you. Now, this might not be a conscious thought, but we're programmed for a really long time from media, from everything we see and hear, that alcohol is really fun. As long as part of you sees alcohol as a solution, you'll keep reaching for it because you still think it's doing something for you. So if you think it helps you relax, you're going to keep drinking it to relax. If you think it helps you socialize, you're going to still reach for it to socialize. If you think it's giving you more fun, you're going to not want to stop it. It helps you unwind. If you believe these things, it's very hard to change this type of habit because again, it doesn't rely on willpower. And this is what you might be facing. Who are you without alcohol? So most women don't identify as having a serious problem, but they also don't know how to be someone who doesn't drink. Again, we talked about that shame. Who am I? Am I gonna is my relationship gonna change? Like there's some fear in some of this. So if you still identify as a drinker, it's harder to stop drinking, right? Will I still be fun? Will I fit in? Will I be boring? What do I even like to do now? And I have to say, plug note is that you might find when you stop drinking, you don't enjoy the same things. Not because that alcohol made them better, but because your boundaries changed, what you like to do changed, or you like less of it, or you like what you're doing, I mean, I think when you're sober, you can decide those things. But if you identify as someone who drinks, it's very easy to go back to drinking. And when we look at changing this, it might not just happen overnight. It might be these little teeny things you do that equal big results. Oftentimes, we can't go from 0 to 100 when we do these things because it's a gradual process. So decades of conditioning, alcohol is glamorized, romanticized, there's mommy wine culture, you must drink to have fun. All these things are conditioned and go into our subconscious programming, meaning you don't know they're going on. They're just subconscious, so they're basically automatic. So we think alcohol, again, equals fun, connection, celebration, adulthood. We actually never decided this. We never decided this. This was told to us. You see the commercials of people clinking glasses, they're having a great time. That was programmed. When I look at my son, who made a comment one time about he'll drink when it's his birthday. Where did he get that from? Seeing it from adults drinking and having fun on a birthday. So you have to also look at children, and they had fun without alcohol. They were able to have fun with friends and connect without alcohol. They celebrated their birthdays without drinking. It is something that we're programmed to do as adults, that every adult drinks alcohol. And if it's like a problem, that's your problem. And so the alcohol industry can kind of like just wash their hands to it. And now we have decades of conditioning of mommy wine culture, relaxation with wine. And so, like let's say something bad happens. You think about drinking when you're stressed. It's just, I remember two people talking about eating ice cream, like when you're sad. When you start hearing those things over and over again, you believe that they are the thing that's going to happen. And again, the brain has a shortcut. There's something called the habit loop where you have a trigger, you do something and you get rewarded, right? So you had a really stressful day and you drank wine and you felt better, right? You felt, oh, I feel better. Your brain learns that this can quickly happen. You feel stressed. I remember what happened last time. You drank wine. Let's do that. Right? Friday night. Ooh, it's time to unwind from the week. You had a hard week. Let's drink wine. Stressful day, open a bottle. Date night. Ooh, you have wine. Vacations, drinks, all the drinks. So like the brain, there's conditioning, there's shortcuts, there's all this stuff going on. And drinking becomes automatic. It's just what you do. When I quit drinking, I had a really stressful day at work. I thought about alcohol. I didn't actually think I drank when I was stressed. Isn't that funny? I didn't drink, but the point being is my brain thought, oh, remember when you were stressed this one time? This is what you did. So the thought just boop, plopped up in there. I didn't have to actually think about it. It did it for me. And it made me feel better probably at that moment, even though it really doesn't help you feel better. Your brain doesn't know that, right? It knows that, hey, this has happened. So emotions and your nervous system. I've talked a lot about the nervous system. Also, like before, what I was saying is your nervous system learns, like everything learned that, oh, you had that hard emotion. You were really sad. You drank last time. You should drink. And you're overwhelmed. Oh my goodness, you should drink. Oh, you're happy. You should drink. So your nervous system learns different states. And keep in mind, some of these emotions like stress, it's deeper than that, right? It's so much deeper than just stress. Because usually there's an emotion under that people haven't really actually explored. So they're not even getting to the actual root issue. But also the thing that happens, your nervous system might not be able to, like, I don't want to say function. It's not used to probably certain emotions surfacing. I mean, I've had so many things happen to me after I stopped drinking. It was crazy, and it had nothing to do with the alcohol. I just didn't have awareness of it. So again, you might have more stress and just not know how to deal with it. Boredom, right? You don't know what to do now. Loneliness, right? Loneliness, like we need human connection. Like, how am I supposed to connect with everybody? Like, what if I'm the boring person out? What if my friends don't want to be friends with me anymore? Fear about who you are without it. I mean, these are real serious things, and people feel these things. And uncertainty, what comes the next day, right? And also there's pressure. There's a lot of freaking pressure. But the nervous system prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. So you might have these things happening and start to question, well, maybe I should drink again. Or you might just drink again. And so it's a learned thing. The new version of you feels so foreign. It sometimes feels easier to do this, but this is not the solution to any of it. Also, the other hidden traps, the willpower myth, like I mentioned, rules, moderation, starting over every Monday. Again, willpower works temporarily. It's in your prefrontal cortex, meaning you have a stressful day. Your perfect day that you had planned out sometimes gets destroyed and you go right to drinking. And again, you have to change your beliefs. So when I could identify as someone who doesn't drink because I wanted to be healthy, it got easier over time to identify as a non drinker. And I didn't feel so shameful, but it did take time and it did take practice. Perfectionism and self criticism. One slip becomes, I failed, but shame fuels the very behavior you're trying to stop. And I'm going to say this, what if a slip was information, not failure? When I drank after 6 months, not only did I get super mindful about my drinking because I didn't go back to what I used to do, but I learned a ridiculous amount about myself, that I people please, that I cared so much what people thought of me. Even though I did that, I realized that, oh my gosh, this is so much deeper. And I knew that moderation didn't work. And also people waiting for the perfect time to start. Like slip ups are super normal and these things are normal. And there's not going to be a perfect time. You will always have like something. There's summer, there's vacations, there's holidays, there's everything. So you're not going to necessarily find the ideal time. Maybe you are waiting for something after. I waited until the day after my birthday, or no, I started on my day of my birthday, but I waited till after the weekend. But I'm telling you, there's really no terrific time to start. This isn't going to get easier in a month or 5 months, right? In fact, it could get worse. And solving forever before you start. So I gave myself anxiety in month 2 of going alcohol free because I was thinking about the vacation 6 months down the road. So don't do this because you have autonomy. You can quit for a month, a week, you can do what you want, but sometimes our brains can't handle the 0 to 100. It feels way too much for our nervous systems. So you really, yeah, you really need to just, I think, try it, get curious and start taking little breaks because you don't have to stay forever. A lot of people can't. I've worked with so many people that are sober that couldn't say that, and we don't say that because it is kind of, I don't know. I don't like that, and most people don't either. So I want to just talk briefly about the human needs of Tony Robbins. This is in my book, but every behavior meets a need. So alcohol temporarily meets emotional needs in a way that doesn't last. And we do have these emotional needs that we actually do need to address. People have them and they have things that mean more to them than other people. So certainty, which I like safety personally, but alcohol becomes a predictable way to relax after work, numb emotions, reduce anxiety, or escape stress. It's an illusion of certainty because often this leads to more anxiety, shame, poor sleep, and instability the next day. And so it doesn't actually do what you need it to do. It doesn't create safety. It doesn't create comfort or security. So it's meeting our needs in other ways than these. Variety. So this was me. Alcohol makes nights feel exciting, spontaneous, and different. That is like definitely what alcohol did for me. Every weekend when I did drink, I felt this, but it's manufactured excitement that often ends in regret. I do know that too. And also too, like, I think thinking that you need alcohol to have fun is a problem in itself because it's usually, I don't know, it's just a sign that maybe you should question your relationship with alcohol because it's not the alcohol and it's also not your fault. Like I mentioned, we are conditioned to believe this crap. Significance. Drinking can make people feel more confident, funnier, more accepted, or like they belong. I think of like the shy people that like these kids that are shy that drank and they're like, I felt accepted. And, and it was kind of like to me, like, man, that's like the social lubricant, right? But it's not going to help you throughout life. It's not going to help you in general. It's not a good coping strategy. And this also can become an identity, right? Which is hard to break and it's hard to change. Like the fun one, the wine girl, the party girl. And that means a lot to some people because we don't know who we are without that. So, love and connection. Many people believe alcohol helps them connect, bond, date, or socialize. And this is a hard one because I've met people that have been in relationships with people that drink, and are with people that are sober. And this can feel challenging because we don't know what it's going to look like. It's the uncharted territories. But a relationship should not need this to connect. In fact, sometimes if we think we have to have alcohol, it might be a sign of something we need to address. And again, it can create surface level relationships instead of authentic connection, right? Like, I mean, sometimes we have like whatever, these surface level conversations. And also alcohol, I guess this is what Tony Robbins says we need in our lives, growth and contribution. Growth was a huge one for me, which is why I have a podcast, which is why I like teaching this stuff, because it brings me a lot of joy. So alcohol can block growth. It can also keep people in survival mode instead of helping them evolve into who they're meant to become. Growth comes through learning, healing, stepping outside your comfort zone, and self-discovery. When we are in the constant alcohol cycle, it seems almost impossible sometimes to grow to bigger things. And I don't believe people can't have growth if they're drinking, but could they have more? And could there be more authenticity? And could they even be doing something they really want versus what they're doing now? They might not even know. And contribution, this is giving back and using your gifts to help others, which is also why I'm here. But when alcohol is no longer taking your energy, you have more capacity to serve, create, parent, mentor, volunteer, and pursue purpose. We cannot predict our futures. I am telling you this right now. There were so many things I did not know that was going to happen when I stopped drinking, like writing this book, that you can't predict everything. So this contribution thing is kind of cool because you might do things you never thought you would do once you have more space to think and be creative and to drink and have more time and productivity. Speaking of, what becomes possible when you stop drinking? The sleep thing was huge for me. It really did restore me. You have better health, better longevity, lose weight, less inflammation. The thing is this, we do not want to go back at 80 years old because we didn't want to fit in, because we didn't want to be judged, and then get really upset with ourselves because we didn't follow what we wanted. And then a relationship with yourself you didn't know was possible, and then better relationships in general. There is so much self-love in waking up and having a wonderful morning and not feeling hungover with regret. Again, shame can create fractured relationships with yourself and others. You get clarity on what you want. Most of you might have clarity on what you want, right? But sometimes we don't even know because we're just chasing a buzz and we're, going out, having fun. And sometimes we're not actually addressing our needs. And then also anxiety that finally has space to be heard and healed, and nervous system regulation. Sometimes we don't know if our anxiety is due to alcohol or if it's due to like maybe some overwhelm or some other emotional things we need to work through. And you can have that space when you stop drinking. The ability to feel boredom, stress, and loneliness without reaching for something and meeting your needs in more satisfying ways. Because alcohol is not going to solve anything. It isn't a solution. It's at best a band-aid, but it's not going to help you in the long run. Believe me, I wouldn't have been able to heal my relationship with food or even, work on it or stop dieting or do all the things I'm doing now with my nervous system if I didn't learn and stop drinking. The not drinking part was the catalyst to all the other happy, great things. And then energy that isn't borrowed from tomorrow. You are more productive. You get your workouts done. You feel better. And when you feel better, you start Monday really freaking happy on a really good note. And honestly, it's like this domino effect. And if you are somebody that is ready to change a relationship with alcohol, I'm going to link the link to apply to work with me. I do have a group program. I go through 3 phases, and I'm really excited because I don't want to just help people stop drinking. That's just like the tipping point. But we need to do that. We need support as well, because it also can feel super lonely to do this by yourself. And you sometimes do need a guide. People ask me, how do I start this journey? Well, there's different ways you can educate yourself, like today. I have my book Soul-Led Sobriety. You can follow sober accounts on Instagram. You can read all the things, and I think community is important, and I think getting help's important. And I also think mocktails are fun too. I'm going to get a mocktail list here soon for some fun mocktails for the summer. But I think it's just really starting and just getting some information. And you can decide if you want to take a break from alcohol, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, whatever you think. But I also encourage you to maybe look into getting some extra support because what'll happen sometimes for some people, they're motivated as AF because there's that willpower there. And then it depletes because life and because you have social things or things going on and you're like, I don't know how to do this. Or you get overwhelmed and you go back to familiarity. And some of us have supportive people, but they don't understand totally what we're going through. And I used to ask everybody for validation, which was again another sign that something else is going on. And you're not going to get validation necessarily. I mean, you might, depending on who's in your life, but from someone that doesn't know what you're going through, or they don't have the same goals as you. Right? Because someone can still support you, but they might not understand everything. So again, I'm going to link it below. And if you're interested, I would love to have a conversation with you. You can reach out to me, of course, on Instagram. And as always, if you guys have additional questions, let me know and I would love to answer them.